हेलो। 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 हाँ सर, स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं अब, ठीक है। हाँ हाँ ठीक है, चलिए स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, ठीक है चलिए। हाँ मैं सर, यूट्यूब आप ढूंढ लो, लिंक ढूंढ लोगे? अच्छा, आप नहीं ढूंढ पाओगे। कैसे ढूंढूँ? या था आप बोल दो, मैं यूट्यूब ढूंढ के ग्रुप पे भेज देता हूँ, बोलो। क्या बोल दिया? ठीक है, यूट्यूब का लिंक, लेकिन कैसे ढूंढोगे आप? वो तो उस पे है ना, वो मीडिया सेल वाला आएगा, मीडिया सेल का। हेलो। मैं स्टार्ट कर दूं? अच्छा, और वो उस पे ग्रुप पे भेज दीजिए फिर आप, ठीक है। वो बच्चों के लिए ग्रुप पे, कि यूट्यूब पे ज्वाइन करेंगे बाकी। A very good afternoon to everyone. I apologize for the this delay due to some technical reason. I, Dr. Zishanur Rahman, an assistant professor in Department of Botany, Zakir Hussain, Delhi College, welcome you all in the inaugural and first session of our skill enhancement course on data handling using software packages from presentation and analysis. I'm glad to share that we have got a total 141 participation for our event. This is an online course of 30 hours and will run only on weekends, which gives flexibility to participants for learning without compromising week activities. All the events will be held online and will be live streamed on YouTube. Participants can retrieve these videos for their future learning. Now, I request our bursar of the college, Professor Mukesh Jain, to say few words and encourage our participants. Over to you, sir. Now, I request Dr. Saima Javed, the convener of SDLC, to share kind words. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for kind words and thank you for the encouragement. So now I request Dr. Savinder to invite our speaker and start our first session and introductory remarks. Over to you, sir.
Professor T.R. Rao, who will shed light on biostatistics in biology. Professor Rao is a celebrated academician whose contribution to ecological research and statistical education have spanned more than 6 decades. With a PhD from the University of California, Irvine complemented by degrees from the University of Hawaii and Andhra University, he has cultivated a global perspective that continues to shape scientific thinking. His tenure at the University of Delhi included serving as head of the Department of Geology and director of the Science School of Environmental Studies, followed by impactful teaching assignment as visiting professor at IISER Mohali and IISER Brampur. Biostatistics has been a cornerstone of Professor Rao's teaching legacy with his lecture at several academic institutes tailored especially for students and early career researchers. His insightful and methodological approach to analyzing biological data has empowered countless students, including me, to engage deeply with ecological research using rigorous statistical methods. Professor Rao's work has received wide international acclaim. He was honored with the Canadian government postdoctoral fellow during his tenure at the Pacific Biological Station in Nanaimo, British Columbia, and earlier received the East-West Center Scholarship funded by the US federal government. His global impact was further recognized when he was invited as a visiting scientist by the International Institute of Ecology in Brazil and later by National Taiwan Ocean University in Keelung, Taiwan. These prestigious affiliations speak volume about the international esteem in which his research is held. In 2015, he was awarded the Teacher of the Year by the Indian National Science Academy INSA, a distinguished honor that celebrates his unmatched dedication to mentoring and educating students in India. With over 65 publications and research guidance provided to 10 PhD and 12 MPhil scholars, Professor Rao's legacy continued to illuminate the academic and scientific community. Now there is a lot more to say, but due to time constraint, I am stopping here and I would like to invite Professor Rao for his inaugural lecture to enlighten our participant with his vast knowledge of this subject. Over to you, sir. सर शायद माइक ऑफ है आपका.
Are you good now?
Yeah, now it's.
Um, let's see if I can just. Anyway, I'm sure you can see me. Okay. First of all, I must thank the organizers of this course, particularly Samindra Chatwal, who was kind enough to invite me to give a lecture here. I'm honored to be here as a resource person and address the students who are participating in this. At the same time, I'm really embarrassed that I was asked to give the inaugural address when we have an eminent biostatistician from the US, Dr. Professor Sundaram here. She should have been given the honor of opening this inaugural session. But for reasons quite unknown to me, the college has decided to invite me. I suppose there is some kind of a familiarity because I have been here in Zakir Hussain College 2 or 3 times to give some lectures. So I suppose familiarity gives some kind of a distinction to me. which I'm sort of honored to take it. And to make matters clear, I am not a statistician by any stretch of imagination. I am a biologist and a hardcore ecologist, and the only claim I have to statistics is I have been teaching biostatistics in some form or other to a range of students, ranging from undergraduate to PhD students, and sometimes to junior faculty also. This subject of biostatics, and over a period of time, I suppose, you tend to develop some kind of a not an expertise, but a familiarity, and I would say more of a passion that I have developed for the subject. And I always strive to convey this essence and the importance of the subject to my students. So, if you kindly permit me, I'll just begin my talk because I think we lost some time already. Okay. Savindra, can I share the screen and start?
Yes, sir.
Shall I share the window?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can share the window. It's visible, sir.
I cannot see here, but let's see what's the problem.
We can see, sir.
Show my screen. Okay. Can I go into the presentation mode?
Just on the bottom right.
I know, but I'm just not able to. Let me see first. It's not stabilizing me. What's the problem?
I'm not sure, sir. Possibly were you using window share or the PPT?
No, I missed the.
Because window sharing would be
Okay,
more convenient. Then you can see the screen. Otherwise, it will be difficult.
Beautiful.
So
No, I thought I was pressed. Shall I go back and see why I'm not able to? Let me go back and see.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Share my screen. Share window.
No, sir. I think it will be better if you share entire screen.
Oh, great. Oh, sure.
Then you can see your presentation also easily.
Oh.
Yeah,
I think I had first share only the. I think I had first share only the window.
Sir, it will work. Did before it will work when you open presentation now, then it will show.
No.
So if you open your presentation now,
sorry for this inconvenience.
No issue, sir. No issue. Take your time.
But can you see the whole screen or only part of it? Hello?
Sir, we can see your presentation, but it is not in the presentation mode. So
that's what I'm trying to get into presentation mode.
So it's on the bottom left corner. Sorry, bottom right corner near this volume.
No. I'm familiar. It's not clicking. I don't know why. Something blocking about. Just give me a minute, please.
Sir, I think if you go through screen mode na, it will be visible, because usually when you do through window na, it doesn't work.
Yeah, but it didn't work in total share of the window. Kindly allow me. Let me see. Give it one more time. Share the screen.
Yes. So if you go for the entire screen and share, then you will see your image. Then you will have to minimize the screen and open the PPT. Then it will be visible.
Okay, let's see the entire screen. Okay.
Now minimize it, sir. Minimize it and open the
Statistician that I have developed a lot of passion for this. Basically, what I want to do, I am going to give a biologist's perspective of what it is all about. I don't know why it is jumping all by itself. Okay, so basically, statistics is all about the science and its misconceptions. Statistics is such an important aspect of the sciences that it has been called the grammar of science. Just as you can't write any meaningful sentence without grammar, you can do meaningful science without some statistical applications. It also has received wide acknowledgement that acquiring knowledge, statistics is the only way to acquire any branch of knowledge. So, with all these things now, one would expect that we would develop some kind of a scientific frame of mind and rational thinking. We are living in a very strange times when our political netas will exhort students at all levels to develop scientific temper, and the very next day they will go to a havan and inaugurate the havan, hoping to propitiate rain gods. We also have situations where a professor teaches astrophysics and simply comes home and talks about a kundali not matching for his daughter's marriage. So, this is the kind of a situation we are living in. We have not been able to develop rational thinking. Whether it has spread to college level, students level or not, I don't know. But I always tease my students to see if they can approach anything that they see in nature, in their day to day life, with such a statistical frame of mind. This my lecture today is to put you in a statistical frame of mind. It's a broad canvas I have painted and give you some interesting concepts about it and also a brief history. It has become such an important field that it is all pervasive in mathematics, economics, commerce, agriculture, medicine, biology. Not only this, into humanities also, statistics finds wide applications. Psychology, education, sociology, linguistics. So you have this idea that practically all branches of knowledge could benefit from some knowledge and application of statistical concepts. But unfortunately, the common man feels entirely different about statistics. The man on the road, the informed man, the man who watches social media, reads things, newspapers, etc. What's his impression? He reflects Benjamin Disraeli's opinion, lies, damn lies, and statistics. So I tell my students that you are going to learn a higher level of telling lies than damn lies, and you go to statistics. This kinds of a misimpression about and skepticism about statistics is all pervasive, humorous as it looks, but many of them feel this way about our statistics. Statistics only tends to confuse you. But these impressions are common man because of the kind of exposure they get in statistical terms from our government. Governments that just use, they have huge statistics organizations and departments. They juggle all the data and then come up with all kinds of things, statements to claim. Good, but using the same statistical data, the opposition parties claim that nothing has been achieved by the present government. You start wondering, how is it possible that the same data can yield entirely two different conclusions? So that's why Evan Isser says two different experts using the same figures can draw different conclusions. You see, statistics abound in quotations. It seems to be the butt of humor by various persons. That's another interesting. And my favorite, Mark Twain. Facts are stubborn, but statistics is pliable. You can mold statistics the way you want to get some nice conclusions which suit you. A recent COVID statistics confirm this kind of a ambivalence or confusion or misleading, because you can see the wide disparity in the reported deaths versus the estimated deaths, up to 196% in India's case. Whom to believe? The estimated one, which are based on really clinical data and all those things, they're not to be just swept aside and say, oh, no, I don't believe this. Or our own government's data, nobody knows. And we are not alone in this. US, Mexico, Russia. And also you can see this one. Compared to USA and India, the deaths per million is a huge thing, 3,500 for USA. In India, it's less than, almost close to 500. Is this possible? You mean that we are so well organized in terms of containing COVID that we limited these deaths? Nobody knows. Even governmental reports cast doubts on the way statistical data are collected. See, this statement, which is the last sentence of the report submitted by this committee to the government. Adjusting data to its desired end will defeat its purpose. Adjusting data? That sounds very suspectful, because why would anybody adjust data to suit the kind of results or statements you want to make? I don't know. So I'll just give a brief history of statistics quickly. Some rudiments of the statistics might have prevailed during ancient times, maybe in the beginning of 2nd century, 3rd century. But really, biostatistics as a field of inquiry or search and pursuit of truth sort of blossomed during the Renaissance period. During the 17th century, gambling casinos proliferated throughout Europe. These gambling casinos, obviously, the guys playing these casinos would like to know what is the probability of their winning, whether it is blackjack or roulette. They just want to know the probability, and if there is somebody can help them to calculate the probability, they can see whether they should take risk on betting on this one or that one. This is how it started. Soon, of course, but most people don't realize that the operators of these casinos are in their business to grow, and I don't think on the average they will let you win. I tried these things in a cruise ship and I lost. Okay, next comes the insurance companies. The insurance companies had their own motives. You see, they wanted to know the survival and deaths of people insuring or asking for insurance, life insurance. Because a person comes to you for insuring his life, you would like to know what is the probability of this person living further for another 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Based on that probabilities, they would calculate the amount of annual premium that you have to pay. So if you're a 80-year-old, the premium you have to pay will be extremely high, obviously, because they know that you're not going to survive another 10, 15 years, but still you want a 1 crore life insurance. Obviously, they have to know in detail the survival probability and the longevity of all the persons potentially trying to insure their life. Okay, this actually field has become one into its own called actuarial statistics, which looks at the deaths, life, births of all the people. Thomas Bayes, one of the earliest, I could say, mathematicians or statisticians, but probably more well known as a mathematician, who proposed his well known Bayes theorem, the importance of which was not recognized at that time during his lifetime. And it remained undiscovered, gathering dust for almost 2 centuries. For reasons we don't know, but one of them could be that they felt the theorem is too complex, too complicated to do by manual methods. The advent of computers made it possible to do all these calculations required by the Bayes theorem, and suddenly, presto, it's just an explosive growth of Bayesian statistics. These days, practically all fields of biology, including genomics, proteomics, and you name it, any omics, heavy powered statistical applications are there which are based on Bayesian statistics. The traditional null hypothesis testing schemes, they are still continuing, but then many researchers or analysts feel that Bayesian statistics are much, much efficient, more efficient. Francis Galton has a double distinction. One distinction, of course, is the cousin of celebrated Charles Darwin. And the another he has is the founder of ill-fated eugenics. Eugenics that advocated elimination of humans with unfit genes, and they should not be allowed to reproduce. A ghastly, diabolical theory that was followed by Nazi regime during Hitler's time. And gradually it fell out of repute, known for doing a lot of things in statistics. A couple of interesting episodes I will quote is, he is one of the probably earliest to show some kind of a correlations or lack of it. He found every district or county of England where he gave a rating of the attractiveness of the females in that area in a statistical sense, so that you can sort of start developing north to south regressions, etc. I really don't know how he managed to get this beauty sort of data from probably candidly from females. I don't know. Okay, then Carl Pearson is a giant among statisticians. He was responsible for many tests. We have this Pearson's correlation coefficient named after him and developed by him. But my favorite, of course, is Ronald Fisher, who, besides being a towering giant of the statistician, is also the founding father of population genetics. Earlier in his life, he was also a contributor to this eugenics theory. So he was ridiculed and he was also suspended from his chair and all that. But by and large, we owe a lot of statistical theories and testing procedures to him. He developed especially field testing procedures using analysis of variance. I also should mention a little bit of Indian contributors. I should choose Mahalanobis, Chandran Mahalanobis. I think a lot of people know him as the advisor to Prime Minister Nehru, and he was responsible for Nehru introducing the 5-year plans, which was a great success. He also started the journal Sankhya, and he was an advisor to Nehru in so many activities of the government in the undertakings. He advised in terms of collection of socio-economic data by the government. In honor of his contributions to statistics in India, his birthday is celebrated as a National Statistics Day. Of course, we should mention a centenarian who recently passed away at the age of 103, Professor C.R. Rao, whose contributions are immense to the development of statistical techniques. In 23, he was awarded a Nobel Prize equivalent called the International Award for Statistics. Until his last, say, the 102nd year, he was involved in guiding and teaching. In later years, he settled in Penn State University. So one thing that bothers me, of course, is statisticians of Indian origin are very well known in many of the academic institutions in the US and Canada. There is practically no statisticians Indians. Indians are well known in the biostatistics area, but it saddens me to see that biostatistics is not developed as a serious subject until recently, of course, in many of the universities. When I started teaching almost 40 years ago or more, there was no statistics, there was no biostatistics. Research scholars were just floundering around, just going around desperately to see if somebody could help them with a simple t-test. There was no guidance. The only one, you would rush to some Indian Statistical Institute, some faculty member, if he's in your locality or something like that. Most people were not trained to look at some data, and still PhD guidance was going on. Well, that's a sad stuff, but I think there is a great improvement now. Many universities have a qualified biostatistician on their faculty, and well, in general, there is a good development of statistical software, which most PhD students use now. The question one would ask, especially if you are a biology student, statistics seems to be more mathematics oriented. How does it help me? Well, it does. First of all, remember this. Statistics does not tell you whether you are right. It tells you the probability of your being wrong. What is the probability that you are wrong? In what? In any hypothesis you propose, in any experiment you do, it will tell you what are the chances of you being wrong. And you naturally, you try to minimize these chances. You can totally confusing. But apply some statistics, it will reduce to some meaningful statistic parameters, mean, standard deviation, the spread, coefficient of variation, and all this. And that makes sense. It reveals trends. You can have tons and tons of data on carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. And once you start plotting it, you can see how the carbon dioxide concentration has been increasing over last century or so, and how it correlates with increasing environmental temperature. It, it helps you to test hypotheses in a scientific way. It also helps you making predictions based on the experiments you have done or the observations you have made. This is very clear when, based on the present data, atmospheric scientists are able to predict what would happen if the conditions were to remain the same, what would happen to the atmospheric temperature, say 50 years from now. And it will provide new insights. A lot of people don't realize it provides new insights. This is how population genetics grew, because as Fisher was developing and more sophisticated, newer statistical testing procedures, along with side by side, in tandem, population genetics also was growing. Why do I need statistics? You need it for various reasons. Number one is, in biology, is there is enormous amount of variation, because we know that variation is the foundation or the raw material on which natural selection acts and evolution proceeds. Absolutely no variation only if you are fraternal twins or if you are cloned. Otherwise, due to genetic recombinations due to sexual reproduction and various other factors, there is a shuffling of your genes, and constantly there is variation, and no two individuals show exactly the same phenotype or genotype. So we have to account for this variation. These variations occur in physiological and behavioral responses also. The physiological kind of response that an organism might show in the pond in Delhi might be entirely different from the same species showing responses in a New York pond, because the ambient conditions are very different. So the major headache seems to be how to account for this variability when you just collect a sample. This variability has to be accounted for so that you know if any factor that you're studying has some significant effect on it, over and above the amount of genetic variation that is present there. Second thing is uncertainty, and more technically, you can call it a stochasticity. Nothing is certain in life except death. In the US, they used to say, except death and taxes. I don't know if that applies fully in India, because there are many people who don't have to pay tax and many others who don't pay tax. But the other thing is certain. Death is certain, but everything else is uncertain. In fact, even with reference to death, there is uncertainty in so many ways. When you are likely to die, in the prime of your youth or when you are 90 years old, where you are likely to die, at home or in a hospital atmosphere. What will be the cause of the death of you? Under the wheels of a BMW car or in a hospital ICU bed? So there are uncertainties associated with everything. In biology, everything is uncertain, and statistics has to help us to account for the degree of uncertainty or probability. So statisticians are very clever, and you ask anything, they will simply say, well, I'm not sure, I'm not certain. It's possible it happens. Oh, probably it may. Kind of replace. So you can see that. So why do I need stats in my research? Next one, after variation and uncertainty, is sample to population. There is no population where you can entirely account for the every single unit or individual of the population, unless the population is relatively small. You might tag every individual tiger in Ranthambore National Park, might be easy with some methods. But otherwise, most populations are immense in sizes. Imagine the number of mosquitoes in your area, fruit flies, fish in a lake, immense populations. You want to know about the population parameters, the mean, the standard deviation, etc. You cannot sample the whole population. The only time you sample the entire population is when the government is conducting census. They go to every household, sample every single individual, get all the data. But other than that, very rarely that you can look at the entire population. You have to be satisfied by taking a sample. A sample which you hope will be a true estimator of the population parameters. So we have a lot of problems extrapolating from a sample to population. A lot of statistics is looking at and addressing this problem and says how faithfully can my sample become an estimator of the population parameters. So we asked what's the probability of sample value being true for entire population. In Sanskrit, there is a small nyai called Sthali Pulak Nyai. I don't know how many of you know Sanskrit. Sthali means cooked food, rice, maybe a dish of rice. Pulaka means a grain of rice. What this nyai says in Sanskrit is, in order for you to check if the whole rice is cooked, you need to sample just one grain. You press and see if it is cooked. And then you declare, rice is ready. You don't go through every single grain. So, unusual situation where just taking one individual and you are making a statement about the entire population of rice grains in the dish. That's not there. So we have to see how best to use our sample to make a faithful estimate of the population parameters. So statistics is all about probability. By now you got this idea. Consider these statements. Those of you who are not familiar with them always see these belong to the family of which you are familiar with hibiscus. Okay? They are pentamerous. That means everything is in 5. The petals, sepals, anthers, etc. Oh, this is 2. And this from molecular biology. Followers of Jainism are vegetarians. These, we label them as deterministic. There is no probability here. They are there, perhaps except the last one, because I remember seeing a couple of my Jain friends in KFC. But otherwise, these are deterministic. Statistics has nothing to do with this. Look at this bunch of statements. Does Karela help in diabetic control? Probably, you will say. Predators controlling prey populations? Maybe. Is monsoon going to be normal this year? Well, the whole country and the government hopes so. See, now this also, we say these are probabilistic. For each of these statements, there is no deterministic 100% sure kind of thing. We simply say most probably, least probable, etc., etc. Okay? Some people might believe that the last item should go into the top list. Okay. So by now, we are beginning to believe that in biology, social sciences, even in day-to-day events, many processes, events are all probabilistic. With this kind of a conviction, you can start asking questions in terms of probability. Here I give you some examples. You can ask questions like this. Yeah, that is something scary. You see, what is the probability that it will resurgence again? You might say with greater probability that a chain smoker will get lung cancer. But still, you're talking about a probability, because I know a lot of people who smoked throughout their life and lived up to 90. So you say most probably it's true that eventually you will get lung cancer if you're a smoker. This is also dire prediction. If we don't do something about it, the atmospheric temperature will be increased by 3 degrees, which is terrible consequences. Government promises this, and many people will say probably. And you can say, how probable is this? We don't know. Is another thing that's sort of hanging on us, this on global affairs, Ukraine-Russia war. You can also ask questions like, sounds unbelievable, but you can say the probability is near zero. You can also ask that politically sensitive question. What is the probability that he will become Prime Minister in 2028? And finally, you can also ask, what's the probability that you will successfully complete this course? Okay? What will you all say? 100% you must say, okay? That will make our organizers very happy. Right, Savindra?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, hypothesis is the first step in any investigation. Where does this hypothesis come from? Your observations. You observe something either in the field, in a forest, in a desert, in a pond, or in the laboratory. And your curiosity is aroused. What is the explanation this is happening? I want to test. So you set up a hypothesis. Then you want to test it. Conduct an experiment and see the results and ask the question, did the results support your hypothesis? Yes? Great. Your hypothesis was right. If it's not, then you look for an alternative hypothesis. That is a scientific method. Hypothesis is an explanation in trial. You have an explanation, but you want to make it a hypothesis, and you have to do something so that it becomes almost 100% sure thing, It must be testable, and it must be falsifiable. Testable, of course, is obvious. Falsifiable, not too many people understand this scientific term. Karl Popper sort of popularized this one, where he feels verifiability is not a great criterion. Falsifiability is a better criterion for truth. This means now, basically, to quickly explain, if you have various hypotheses, all falsifiable, they must be potentially falsifiable. Then you keep checking every one of those hypotheses, and if everything you are not able to prove, finally you are left with one which is not falsifiable. That means you can't say it won't happen. Then that is the hypothesis you would select. That's called the hypothetical deductive method, and promoted by Karl Popper. So some of these statements, which should be like a hypothesis, but would they satisfy the first condition? Are they testable? This sounds like we can test, right? That is difficult to test. Horoscopes didn't match, so businessmen went corrupt. There is no way you can conduct a scientific experiment or observations that will prove that the mismatched horoscope was responsible for the businessman going bankrupt. That's not a testable hypothesis. In fact, that's not even a hypothesis. That's an opinion. You will fail in the exam if you don't study. This is testable, but you don't get a control. That means you will have one batch of students not studying, and failing, and the other batch studies and they pass. Your hypothesis is proven. But who is willing to not study and agreeable to failing to satisfy your experiments? No. This is another thing. Now, this is a feeling that this is how it happens in taking a receptionist. But can it be proven? And what is a testable quantitative index for pulchritude? This is testable. But if you say she's more cunning than her brother, that might be hypothesis, but sorry, it is not testable because there is no way you can quantify objectively cunning. So I generally, when I give these lectures to students, I tell them, look, some feel like they are not testable and they're more like opinions. I'll go in a little more detail later. See if you can make it testable and quantitative. Can you get an index for cunningness on what parameters? That's again testable. So some of these things are, you can see that they are quantifiable. You can put a quantity because statistics wants quantities. Every test requires some amount of quantities that you can work on. That's also good. This also good. You can gather statistics from Delhi University colleges and see what's happening. Some observations are not easily quantifiable. Examples? This girl asks how much. Poor guy, he won't know how to quantify this. Right? Just another example. No, these are sort of humorous, but the basic thing is there are some parameters in our life, mostly behavioral, for which there are no quantitative observations possible, and hence you tend to continue with your opinion, which cannot be tested. How terrible, I don't know. So, proceeding to setting up a hypothesis, now there is always possibility that there are more than one hypothesis. So you should not shut doors to other possible hypotheses and take up only the one that you think is the best, your pet hypothesis. So now you say that's an observation, and what is the hypothesis you want to set up? You can come up with all kinds of observations and the hypothesis. Some people say he didn't have enough sleep last night. Other students suggest that he had a nasty fight with his wife the previous night, and things like that, So you see, can this be tested? So generally, when you have a set of hypotheses, one advice is, a rule of thumb is, you should select the most plausible one first. It's called parsimony principle or Occam's razor. In other words, you go to a doctor in a hospital, hopefully a corporate hospital. Sir, ma'am, sir, doctor, sir, I have a bad headache. Most plausible hypothesis, give some strong headache medicine, take 2 tablets and see me tomorrow. But what if he says, maybe you have a tumor in your brain and let's get an MRI? Of course, that's happening in many corporate hospitals. So you must consider alternate hypotheses. I'll quickly go through interesting hypothesis testing. And also note that we are talking about twins, Meena and Reena. Such experiments or observations where you want to test various hypotheses are made relatively easy when you have twins because their behaviors will be very, very, very similar. What is their problem? They sit back in the back seat in the row and they feel sleepy during the class, which meets from 1:30 to 2:30. I'm sure many of the students listening to this would have known this or experienced this. If the class is immediately after lunch, students tend to feel sleepy or drowsy. So we asked, in order for us to set up a hypothesis, we asked, why do they feel sleepy during the class? We look at all the possible hypotheses. They both have heavy lunch during the class, which makes them sleepy. This is a plausible hypothesis. Too much good food, heavy lunch, you come to the class, you sit in the back seat and feel drowsy. When you sit in the back seats, row all the way, and especially when the classroom is big and the back seats are for interaction, the teacher generally tends to ask questions in the front row people. And students sitting in the back seat, either the teacher intentionally ignores them, but some of the students sitting in the back seats, they find it advantageous because either they can doze off or keep looking at their social media, things like WhatsApp. This is also possible. Where there is no ventilation, no AC, it feels very warm, and which tends to promote sleepiness. I'm sure some of you must have experienced during your high school days or in places where there is no AC in classrooms. Last one, which many of the teachers will not be ready to admit openly, is that that teacher could be simply boring, which makes you feel sleepy. Okay, so how do we test such hypothesis? They feel heavy because they have heavy lunch before the class. Now, here comes the beauty of having twins for such experiments. Make Meena to eat lunch before the biology class, and Reena will eat after the biology class. That is at 2:30 she will eat. Now, what should happen? Now, Meena will feel sleepy, but Reena will not. But she will feel sleepy in the chemistry class, which starts from 2:30. Right? How do you test the second hypothesis? Because they are sitting in the back row seats. All right. Move Reena to the front seat. And let Meena stay and continue to stay in the back row. Now what should happen? Meena will continue to feel sleepy, but not Reena. Right? So you can see situations where you have hypotheses, however silly they might look. It's only an example of how you have to consider alternative possibilities and be prepared to have an open mind to test those possibilities. And you have to design your experiments accordingly. So, numbers, opinions, and data. Day in and day out, we are bombarded with numbers. In newspapers, in media, television, and political speeches. How do we manage to understand all this, what's happening with all the numbers? See, the thing is, numbers are not data. They become data only when you give them a context. Okay? So, now I'll just give a bunch of numbers. Except the last one, probably nothing makes sense for you. Well, you will simply say, okay, a bunch of random numbers you have chosen. I don't see any meaning or context in it. I agree. Now I give you some context what they are, and suddenly you will see, wow, they are data. That's very sad. Number of people dying in 2023, 1,72,000. Number of calories in one ostrich egg. Ostrich egg sometimes could be 1 foot long. Number of cosmetic surgeries performed in India in 2024. Oh, good. I mean, this is people are catching up, and cosmetic surgeons are doing well in India, but still far away from US, where it is supposed to be 6 million, not 1.2. Tons of plastic dumped into the oceans. This is a cause for concern in environmental issues. Lot of plastic is dumped into the oceans, causing disturbances to the marine ecosystems. This is one statistic that people don't try to remember. Everybody talks about his centuries, but he's apparently made to have made 38 ducks in international cricket. That's a very interesting. Deaths in India. That's disgusting and disgraceful. Amitabh Bachchan's net worth in crores.
So, dear participants, I just received a call from the Professor Rao. There is some electricity issue, so that will be fixed within next 1 or 2 minutes. So, meanwhile, you can write your name and to mark your attendance in the chat box so that he will rejoin. And only 5 minutes talks is left for Professor Rao. Then we will start the second lecture. So, have patience and please mark your attendance over here. And we are extremely sorry, Rajeshwari Sundaram ma'am, for being delayed. It was some technical error initially, and now it's because of some electricity issue. At
No problem, no problem. I remember last time when I gave talk, there was thunderstorm in DC, so everything was shut down. So these things happen.
Sorry, ma'am.
No problem.
Those who, all the participants, those who are listening at YouTube, they can write their name in the chat box on YouTube. There is one person who wants to speak. Yes, uh, Ms. Gunjan Goswami, you can speak. Please unmute yourself and you can speak if you want to say something. Ms. Gunjan Swami, you can speak something if you want. You have raised your hand.
No, sir. No, sir.
Meanwhile, you can also note down the question for Professor Rao so that once he will join, so he will. And make sure to write your complete name, the same name you have mentioned in the registration form. So I received a call from Professor Rao, and it's a persistent electricity issue over there. So he will rejoin us so resolve. So meanwhile, we can start the second lecture. And once the Professor Rao will join us, it is our privilege and honor to welcome Dr. Rajeshwari Sundaram, a distinguished statistician whose career exemplifies the power of data in transforming public health research. Dr. Sundaram currently serves as senior investigator in the biostatistics and bioinformatics branch of the Division of Intramural Population Health Research at the UNIS Kennedy Seward National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, part of the National Institute of Health. Her journey began with academic excellence in India, earning her M. Statistics from the Indian Statistical Institute and a BSc in Mathematics from the University of Calcutta, before completing her PhD in Statistics at Michigan State University. With over 2 decades of experience, Dr. Sundaram had led groundbreaking work in the environmental epidemiology, reproductive health, obstetrics, and pediatrics development. Her methodological contribution span advanced statistical modeling, machine learning, and dynamic risk prediction, making her an authority in longitudinal and survival data analysis. She has published nearly 200 scholarly articles and book chapters, delivered over 50 invited talks, and mentored more than 15 PhD and postdoctoral fellows. Among her numerous accolades, she is an elected fellow of the American Statistical Association, recipient of the Jenny E. Griffith Mentoring Award, and has twice won the NICHD Collaboration Award for her outstanding service to interdisciplinary research. Beyond her research, she is a passionate mentor, educator, and leader in professional statistical organization, with editorial role on prestigious journals including Biometrics and the JAMA editorial board. Dr. Sundaram presence today is not only a testament to her global contribution, but also a unique opportunity for all of us to learn from a scholar who breathes statistical rigor with impactful health insight. And finally, I must say there are many more achievements and honor to mention, but it was a truly Herculean task for me to distill her remarkable CV within the short span. I sincerely apologize if any important point deserving mention has been missed due to time constraint. Let us all warmly welcome Dr. Rajeshwari Sundaram. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be part of this. And I want to thank the organizers for inviting. And I want to start with a funny anecdote. 2 years back, when I started this, I know I gave Professor Zishan a little bit of heart attack, I'm pretty sure, when I said, I'm not sure whether I can come because there's no power. And this seems to be now you could add one more testable question. Does participating in this mean that there will be a power failure somewhere? So in Washington, D.C. also, you can have power failure, and that tends to happen when the weather is really bad. And or somebody did somewhere. It's just in a different form. It does happen. So that was I felt, how do I convince people back in India that yes, power failure happens here too. It just doesn't make it to the news that much. All right. So what I'll start. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I kind of want to. It was wonderful to listen to Professor Rao last time and again this time. And I have to admit, when he said that he's a biologist who's picked up statistics, I'm the other way. I'm a statistician by training, but now I do a lot more scientific research because my interests have gotten into trying to study issues which are of public health impact. I want to mention I have my first MD student So I will be talking a little bit about her work. When I got my PhD in theoretical statistics, I did not envision that I would be mentoring a doctor. So, so that kind of tells how the world is going towards. It's become very important to be able to study both. You have to you are in, and I think that's the main purpose of picking. I think this course is extremely critical. I wish when I was in undergraduate I had things like this to get to. I had a wonderful training in Lady Brabourne College, which is part of University of Kolkata, but I majored in mathematics. And later on, I went to Indian Statistical Institute and started. I majored over there, specialized in applied statistics and data analysis. But at that time, applied statistics was not something that people respected. So if you are really smart, then you do theoretical statistics. And so when I came to United States, I went and searched for a program which was very hardcore theoretical, which is what Michigan State University was, very hardcore theoretical, topics are taught over there. But later on, I'm going to start sharing my slides and then talk a little bit about my background, and it kind of tells why. I'm going to share the window. That works better? Okay. Share entire screen. Share just. Okay, I see what was happening to Professor Rao.
Uh, Ma'am, I think it's better if you join through entire screen. So when you share your screen, you should select
Uh,
entire screen.
Entire screen. Okay. When I do that, okay, we are going to go through this process again. I'm doing share, but you're presenting
Yeah, that's it.
to
Now you
our.
will minimize it. Just minimize the entire window, and then you will see your PPT, and that will be visible to us. So you just minimize from the top.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
yeah, there. Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
it's
So
visible. So
you guys can see.
yeah, slides are
Are you
visible.
able to see?
Yes, we are able to see you.
Okay, let me try to go. Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, it's better, but I
Excuse
think
me.
we are able to see the next slide also in the sidebar.
Oh, I see what's happening
Can you
because
share
I
your
have
full
multiple
screen mode?
screens. So um, when I do that, is it still showing the
Yeah, it's
Yes,
we are
ma'am.
still
next
seeing the
next slide?
sidebar.
Um,
Yes,
uh, okay. Is this too bad to? Let me see. One would think that by now we have learned to work with online tech. Hello,
yes.
uh, technology. And I do work with supercomputers on a daily basis. So, okay, all right. So we do. Okay. What are you guys seeing?
Uh, I think think you have not selected this share screen mode.
Okay, I'm going to do something. Yeah, I think this may come. Are you now seeing
Yeah,
the
it's
full
visible.
screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's full screen.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, on my end, I have multiple screens in front of me, so it was picking up the wrong one. All right. Thank you, everybody. In spite of all the tech around, and as I mentioned, it's really an honor following Professor Rao. He was just being too humble. And he's an amazing teacher. And this is the second time in a row I'm following him, and I don't mind following him at all. A little bit, what my talk is going to be slightly different. I'm going to try to show you, illustrate examples of how biostatistics, or nowadays what is called data science, is in action in real life. I am what is my title is a senior investigator. That's why I also have gray hairs nowadays, because it takes time to earn the senior title. It's like professor. And I focus on using biostatistical and bioinformatics tool, nowadays actually more of machine learning, in trying to address questions of interest in public health. Now, I focus mainly on reproductive health, environmental health, by that impact of pollution, on various health issues, and obstetrical care. So I'm going to try to illustrate some examples through my experience. And first of all, Professor Rao did an amazing job in trying to set the on what is statistics, why do we need to learn statistics, and what are the challenges in doing so. I'm going to give my 10 cents or 10 paisa worth of um, uh, opinion about statistics, purely created from my personal experience. And then I'll try to illustrate in two subject area, reproductive science and obstetrical care. I know a lot of you are biologists, but I'm pretty sure you can appreciate medical examples. And now on to what I want to talk a little bit about. What is statistics? You heard a lot about from Professor Rao, but what is typically the goal of statistics is, I actually think it's a part art and part science of summarizing data. He wonderfully gave gave examples of how data can be used or manipulated, right? Each side tries to convey their story. So now, if that happens, then you should be thinking, why do I then need to use statistics when people can use it to their own benefit? The answer is, it's also science. So that means it is structured, it needs to follow certain rules. And you need to be able to make sure that those rules and guidances are followed. Now, as an end user, you are bombarded with so much of data related things. You open a newspaper, you get to see. Now, I think younger generation, you don't open a newspaper, you scroll through your phone, you get a lot of information. Now, the point is, are you getting the right synopsis? That's what you need to. And you need to have some background in statistics to be able to make sure you are not being cheated. Now, question is, the other thing that I struggle, because I am in a very what's called a transdisciplinary world. That means I am a statistician who works very closely with doctors, epidemiologists, psychologists, and even biologists. And so the question is, how do I convey, when I'm talking to them, how do I convey my information so that they understand? And as you all know, one of the reasons why biologists especially should know enough statistics is because you conduct studies, you conduct experiments. Now, at the end of the conducting the experiment, started my project with. And so your trial and study should really come with, did the new treatment work between exposure and the outcome of interest? Are the two groups being compared the same or different? Is the new, like, for example, if you have the same topic is being taught by two different professors, are they conveying the same information or not? How do you make comparison? So you need to know statistics to be able to design properly so that you can get to the bottom of it. And so all these questions can be answered by statistical inference. And what does statistical inference mean? It means you build a model, you do testing, you do compare, you estimate and calculate what are called confidence intervals. So now, do we need statistics in biomedical research projects? I'm not just saying because I need a job, but the serious answer is yes. Statistics is really needed in most of the disciplines. And now, why? To optimize. So when you are trying to study a question, how best to design a study that can address that question? Now, once you have designed the study, what is the next step? You need to analyze the results that you have. So those results get converted to numbers, and you have to use statistical tools to summarize those numbers to come up with an answer. And then once you have your result, those will be now in numbers. If you say that, if somebody asks, was the drug effective in reducing headache, number of days of headache? You say yes, the difference, the reduction. You just say x1 bar minus x2 bar. That is the sum of number of days of headache before treatment and after treatment. You look at the difference and you say -2. To a layman, that -2 doesn't make sense, right? So you want to convey it in the context of your question. The number of days of headache went down by 2. So the drug was effective in reducing the number of days. So the interpretation of results becomes I gave a very simple example. Obviously, in real life, when you're dealing with these things, the problems are much more complex. And when you make conclusion, it's not enough to say that the days reduced by -2. It just could be that for that person, by chance, was on vacation, the number of days was relaxed, so the number of days went down, right? So that could be purely by chance. So you have to associate a number that you estimate with the chance of how much it could go wrong. Like Professor Rao mentioned, I'm reiterating that we always present the probability of saying something incorrectly. That means by chance, it could be -2, all right? And usually there is a 5% cutoff or 1% in serious matters, or even smaller, 0.001 if you're looking at drugs which are very critical for life. Now, the whole point is I'm a statistician talking to people, most of the students may be from biology or similar area. Now, you may want to think, why do I need to know statistics? I can go and get help from a statistician. Why do I need to know? The answer to that is a bit more detailed, because first you need to understand, does a statistician play in this type of interdisciplinary collaborations? So as you by now know from the previous lecture and now, that you are trying to solve problems in biology or other biomedical area, but you have to, when you design, you have to use statistical principles. For example, if you go and talk to people who were raised in, let's say, Calcutta, and then you say, oh, do you like snow? The first day you say they see snow, they are going to be freezing and going to run away from it, right? So to really address a question, you should keep in mind randomness plays a very critical role. So when you want to ask questions, you want to design them following the statistical principles and making sure you are taking a sample from the population you are targeting. So I'm not going to belabor on that point, but I just want to keep mentioning that there are statistical principles to follow whenever you are studying those. Now, if you don't know any statistics, if you are spending your critical life trying to do experiments, how do you know that all the statistical principles are being followed? You would be like, yes, it is good to collaborate with statisticians, but when they say make sure you have a random sample, how do you know you have a random sample if you don't understand the concept of randomness? So I do think that statistical literacy is very critical, especially for people who are in what we say ology type of things, that is biology, psychology, epidemiology, all this type of disciplines critically need statistical skills. And then what does think about the collaboration with the statistician? Okay, you do have a statistician. Now, can you hand off your work to the statistician and be done with it? Answer is no. It's a two-way street. You have to have a continuous communication back and forth. Statistician will bring their statistical expertise to the project and will help you deliver, address important questions like, is there enough power? You know, what power means is, do you have sufficient sample size to be able to address the question that you are wanting? And remember Professor Rao mentioning that you always give numbers with a certain amount of error, right? That can happen. So what we do, power means that you have sufficiently large sample size so that that error can be controlled. It is not too large. If it is too large, that means your experiment is not going to be looked upon well, right? Or you want to do, you have designed all these things, you have sufficient power, you figured out, but then you have to analyze and make your conclusions. Was my treatment experiment successful or not? What statisticians refer to as, was my result significant? And the way nowadays people work in this type of transdisciplinary world, that is why you will see examples of reproductive science and obstetrical care from me, is because we start getting involved also in trying to address scientific questions, but we approach it through purely statistics. So if you are working, whether it is in data analytics, business analytics, or biomedical sciences, pharmaceutical companies, there are so many other places nowadays. Every single IT firm, has strong statistical community, or what they say, data science community. Amazon, for example, has one of the most thriving data science program. Now, the other challenge that happens on why you need to be, even if your major is not statistics, is why you need to collaborate to develop some statistical skill, is so that you can understand each other. Like, I would not understand if you go too much deep into the genetics that you learn in biology courses. The same way you will be unable to understand what I say when I go deeper into the statistical terminology. So we have to find a middle ground so that we can communicate with each other. So having those type of skills is important. And the other thing is to get an understanding how long. I used to work a lot with my institute head, and she was an epidemiologist, And the previous generation of epidemiologists were not so quantitatively trained. So she would come to me with questions. She was very nice mentor, but she would come to me with questions. Raji, can you help me with this or that? And I would say, okay. And she would like literally talk to me about something that I would suspect would take 6 months to 1 year to do. And she would say, how about next week? Do you think we would have the results by next week? So that used to be, and initially it used to frustrate me quite a bit. Then I realized that she does not comprehend the amount of work involved. For her, statistics was a black box. It was no different from, just punching in some numbers and out comes the result. So, so dealing with the time constraints and understanding their knowledges, biases, and so on becomes a very critical part. And especially when you're junior, which I presume most of you who are taking this training are going to be, you do have to develop the skills to understand and be patient. Okay. And now, what are the specific responsibilities that statisticians will play a role in? We have talked a lot about design, how efficient designing your experiment. And then the second one, I think this is where Professor Rao was emphasizing, and we lost him to the power cut, was identifying the right endpoint to study. So they can be, you just have to spend a lot of effort in trying to make sure that the outcome is the correct one that you need for your experiment. And then analysis plan. So when you conduct an experiment, you will not just have one aim, you will have multiple aims. So make sure that you have a proper analysis plan, statistical method written out for each of the aim. And then, as I mentioned, our results are presented with respect to type 1 and type 2 error. So we want to minimize type 2 error and control and keep a fixed threshold for type 1 error. So those are the things that you would have been taught. If not, that's something you need to focus on. And then stratification, there are various type of adjustments that we do. It's not the type of adjustment that he spoke about. These are called statistical adjustments that are necessary. And I will give you example of stratification as we go along. And always keep in mind, don't go for the most complex looking method. The simpler a method is, it tends to be better. My personal experience has been, if I don't see a hint of results when I display my data, then I know that the significance is going to be marginal. That means there will be only small amount of differences between what I'm trying to assess. So simply put, describing the data should give you the hint of what you are trying to get at. And now I'm going to give you some examples. I'm just going to pause for a minute. I have lost track of the time because of all these things. Could one of the organizers tell me how much time is there?
Ma'am,
Ma'am, you can take 20, 25 minutes more.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to talk now a little bit, but before I do, I kind of want you to appreciate what the current role of biostatisticians are. So I wear two hats. One is I do develop current statistical methods. That means I develop newer and newer methods that will that address the more complexity or new type of data that we encounter. I develop methods for that. And then on the right-hand side are the topics that I focus on from the scientific end. So I spend a lot of time on human fertility. That means pregnancy-related complications and so on. And I also study pediatric health. That That's the, how do you know a baby is born and is following the right trajectory of growth and so on? And now you know that there is an increased risk for autism. So what is the right time, or various types of development, attention deficit disorders? How do we handle those? When is the right time to screen to make sure your child is developing at the right pace or does not have some challenges that need to be addressed? And the third topic I spend a lot of time is studying the impact of environmental toxicants. That means the chemicals that go into making plastics that come through pollution, they seep into our water sources. How do they impact? The first two topics are kind of, you would think, okay, reproductive health and pediatric health. Now, where did this environmental component come in? It comes in because this environmental toxicants impact the most vulnerable, and those are pregnant women, fetus, and older people. I don't study older people, but that's also an area where the impact happens quite a bit. Now, the way my research works is I collaborate in this interdisciplinary. You see those names, Endo, Life, Eager, and so on. Those are huge studies that are conducted. And they run in millions of dollars when we design those studies, because they are the backbone of various things that we want to study and get information. So I was, for example, the lead statistician for life study. So my life study was developed. It's longitudinal investigation of fertility and environment. Okay. So my role as a biostatistician, lead biostatistician, this cost us $12 million, was to make sure all the study design related issues, the proper analysis and the data collection was all done fairly, and use the state-of-the-art methods that are available. And I must admit that it's one of the most successful studies that United States has conducted in this area. And I really feel that I was a very young biostatistician when I started working in that. I learned a lot from the main person who was the scientist behind it, quite a bit. And so my methods on the left-hand side are all kind of developed around trying to address meaningful scientific questions on the right-hand side. And now I'm going to try to give you, I saw your schedule of things that you're learning. I'm happy to see that machine learning is part of your curriculum, because nowadays it's become very critical in trying to address various issues. So as I promised, I will show you two different disciplines of work. And keep in mind, when I study, the questions that I study are the ones that are motivated through quantitative approaches, right? Because I'm a biostatistician, and what can my strength be? When I study human fertility, I will study it from the quantitative perspective. And now a little bit of background on what is human. I've written over here human fecundity, not fertility, because there's a slight difference between the two. Fecundity is just simply the ability to get pregnant. So where to get pregnant, you're all biologists. It requires two, men and women, for reproduction, right? And keep in mind that it's an interplay between biological factors from women, like her menstrual cycle characteristics, and I should have also written for the men, their semen quality, and behavioral factors like intercourse, alcohol consumption, and so on, because that talks about their quality of life. And it is now, that's the basic definition. Now, how do we assess this quantitatively, right? We think about it. It's the number of menstrual cycles needed to get pregnant. There's been tremendous amount of research done in this area. And the other thing that people look at in this area is what are called day specific conception probabilities. That is, this is used a lot for developing proper contraceptives. So, on a specific day, what are the chances that a couple can get pregnant? So, I'm not going to belabor too much, but just to convey to you the points that you take a scientific question like you want to study fertility or fecundity, and how do you do that? You quantitatively study it through time to pregnancy and day specific probabilities. Now, my role comes in is we as, there is a need for developing what is called a preconception counseling. Part of the reason behind it, this is couples tend to now, it's a new, younger and younger generations, current generation included, are delaying trying to get pregnant because they want to study, they want to establish themselves in their career. And as age progresses, by the time they have everything set in a ducks in a row to get, start thinking about family life, they start getting worried. What are my chances of conceiving? And so on. Keep in mind that in reproductive health, 33 is considered old for women and men too. It's not, men are not escaping this. So there is a need for what are called preconception counseling, which in United States is given by the Centers for Disease Control. They bring out guidelines on what are the good lifestyle behavior and so on. And doctors get asked this question, what are my chances? Because treatment, so what is the alternative? Getting treatment, right? Infertility treatment like IVF and so on. But they are extremely expensive. And even if you have the money, they take a lot, they put a lot of pressure on woman's body because she has to go through a lot of medical intervention to do that. So it's not an ideal situation. So there is tremendous need for developing risk calculators that the couples can use at home. Okay, this is my age, this is my BMI, this is my menstrual cycle characteristics, this is how often we have intercourse, and so on. What are my chances for conceiving by 1 month, 6 months, or 12 months? If you do not get pregnant by 12 months of active trying, that means you have some problems with fertility. It is referred to as infertility. And only then you should be considering treatments for conceiving. And now I don't want you to do anything, but just look at the graph and see how complex it gets. This is the type of data that we have. We have data on information related to couple. Keep in mind, both man and woman play a role in getting pregnant. So their profile, and then within each of the menstrual cycle, you will have information. Now, added to that, within each of the cycle, at day level, you will have information. So, like, did you smoke on 10th day of a cycle? Did you have intercourse around the time of ovulation? Things like that. So I want you to just look at the data structure and take away that this is a complex, what we call multi-level data. And on two partners, husband and wife, or male and female. And I've spent a lot of time building, my team has been, my students and all, we have written multiple papers on developing proper statistical models that incorporates biological information correctly to publish papers. And we have been, our team, as I said, our team's being very active in this area. I have started, in fact, writing papers, not just in statistics, in subject matter. I only want to point out this one which says couples body composition and time to pregnancy. What this study found is, I actually led this paper, and what this study found is, when a couple doesn't get pregnant, always it doesn't matter which country or culture you come from, the first focus goes on woman's health. Is she healthy enough? Obesity is one reason why women have difficulty. Then the blame totally goes on her. So the thought was, let us look at the data very carefully. We also looked at her male partner's body composition. And what we found is, it's not just her obesity, it's his obesity also that has an independent effect on her their time to conceive. So because of this strong public health message, this paper actually made into worldwide into news. And I was really I interviewed I grew up in Ludhiana. So in fact, my teacher in Ludhiana from my primary school saw my name and called my mother in Calcutta, is that the same Rajeshwari that was in my class? And my mom said, yes, of course. So it was covered extensively worldwide, and especially I put in a lot of effort in interviewing. I must have given thousands of interviews about this work, because the public message is pure and simple, that both partners have to be healthy to conceive. The burden is not just on her. So, and the other thing that was very gratifying is, I was trained as a mathematical statistician, and I had written a paper which had a scientific impact with a strong public health message. So that is the current world where the disciplines are kind of merging. That is what I want to say. I need to have a good background in biology. You guys, biologists, should have a good background in statistics, and jointly we can make significant impact. So when you take this course, keep this in mind, that this is kind of the way the current research, I wouldn't just say research, it's also true in business analytics, that you need to know a lot of statistics. And as I said, a lot of my effort is in building a risk calculator for infertility. And infertility is actually a global problem. I know in India and China, where one would think their population is very high, but the infertility rates are also going up in different strata. If you focus on people who are in middle class and upper middle class and look at their fertility rates, there is a decline. And it's clearly evidenced by the need for infertility treatments that people are getting. So whenever you kind of study, you cannot just say overall for Indian population. You just have to look at the strata in which these things happen. So actually, and for people who are interested in more on computer science end of this work, this risk calculator, actually, I'm working on with a app company called Glow. I think they keep changing their name. When I started collaborating with them, it was called Glow, and they are collecting data where women are tracking their fertility information again and again. Okay. I need to know how much more time I have remaining.
5 minutes.
I can wrap. Okay. All right. Okay. So, and so this is basically tied with the app company, and we are working on building a risk calculator. So this is a joint collaboration between reproductive scientists, biostatistician, that's me, and computer scientists and software builders in Globe. And I'm not going to spend too much time on part 2 so that we are back on track with the time. The other area that I work where I think biostatisticians can make a significant impact is obstetrical care. And I'm just going to show you a few graphs and stop at that. Cesarean, if you ask around in India and other countries too, you would say that, oh, she delivered through C-section, right? Now, and you can see that globally, each line, it's across time, is showing an increasing pattern. These are all different parts of the world. So globally, the rates are going up. Now, one may think, okay, how does that matter, right? It does matter because C-section is a major surgery. You do not want to do unnecessarily major surgery. And the point I wanted to convey is these are all, again, the same plots, trend over time, broken down into different states and different parts of the world. And you can clearly see when we start looking at, there may be increases in some parts, but not so much in the other parts. The trend is positive, but how fast the rates are going may vary from region to region and within one region itself. So there is a lot of interest in trying to get a control on the C-section rates. And another graph that I want to show is that labor is complicated, even in developed nation like United States. When we look at the number of deaths that happens due to labor complication, it's higher the older the woman is. So as you see, the blue is for 2018 and this brownish one is for 2021. You can see the trend going up, and these are older women 40 and over. But you can still see, no matter what age, the trend of number of deaths due to complications in labor is going up. So as statisticians, we can play a role in trying to properly address issues around this. And World Health Organization and they have brought out, lot of different calls for reducing the C-section rate without increasing maternal mortality. So we can, as statisticians, try to find what is the optimum time for labor progression, because when the doctors are monitoring, when should they step in and not give C-section to people. And I'm going to stop over here, but I wanted to conclude with a machine learning example where we used 228,000 deliveries that were done in United States and tried to build what are called a prediction model for a woman will have a longer labor. And those we used various, I'm just going to throw names so that you understand: deep neural network, gradient boosting, random forest, and logistic regressions. Logistic regression is a very traditional approach. The other three are machine learning approaches. And you can clearly see, we just use this metric to understand the C statistic. And a 0.86 is a very good number. And gradient boosting is a machine learning approach that turned out to be the best in this classifying. That is, a woman comes to the hospital in starting her labor. Based on her information, we are able to predict that she's going to have a long labor or not long labor. And then we also, during this, we also identified what are her characteristics that tell us her labors are good predictors of her labor, and those are listed over here. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to conclude with these plots. So plotting things is very important. The top left is all that I'm going to discuss for sake of time. X-axis is maternal age, and y-axis is risk for prolonged labor. As you can see that when a woman is her height is on the shorter end, she tends to be at a higher risk for longer labor. But the taller she gets, the woman is, shorter her labor. And this is a very well known feature um, in the in the obstetrical world, that woman's height is a predictor of how tall or how long her labor is going to be. The same applies with the age. Older a woman is, the longer her labor will be. So I'm going to stop over here since we are pressed for time, but I hope I have been able to convince you that it doesn't matter from which end you're coming, from the scientific end or from the statistical end, all roads are merging together in this transdisciplinary, in this modern day environment of transdisciplinary work. Okay. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we are also with Professor Rao back. So, as always, it has been a thoroughly enlightening experience to listen both of you. And the way you explain the interdisciplinary connection, collaboration between the two opposite ends, we normally think that these are two opposite ends, the chances of getting pregnant and the data related with it. But the beautifully you explained, it had enlightened us everyone. It was a great learning for most of us, but I think that if there is any question for our participant, they can ask. Uh, Although I have few of them, so but let's ask our participant if they have any question, they can raise your hand and ask the question. So right now you can ask the question from Rajeshwari Sundaram ma'am, and once the Professor Rao is over with his talk, so we will open the question for him as well. So may I know if there is any question? Okay, I think I have received some of them through my chat box. So here it is. So, ma'am, the first question which came from one of my students, that what are the job opportunity in biostatistics?
It's actually, if you call biostatistics as data science, it's the number one discipline in the world, emerging discipline. So if it's considered right now for a few years in a row. The Time magazine does a survey on what profession is number one, and that skill is number one. It is at the intersection of, I have to say, data science is intersection of statistics and computer science. And I also want to point out, since I live in biomedical world, I have to admit that this is data science. This is this generation has to be data scientists. We are in fact trying to change our name to data science from biostatistics and bioinformatics. So yes, very good background.
There is one more question in the chat box. Hello, ma'am. What would be the roadmap of biostatistics for students pursuing bachelor in India in biology?
In bio, if looking at all your professors, they have their head in the right place. The best thing to do is try to do a project or a thesis which kind of uses your skills as a biologist and the skills that you're going to be picking up in this type of courses. And in US, my daughter is starting to apply for colleges. They have to, quote unquote, to get in good college, you have to do passion project, something that you define by yourself. So try to do something like that, whether your curriculum requires or not. And get training in various software, R, Python, and so on. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. So I will try to cut your line so that they will get to know the importance of this topic. So there is two more question. One is, what does it mean by bias in statistics?
Oh, bias. Okay. For example, I am a federal government employee, so I try to stay away from politics because I'm not allowed to. I don't speak publicly about those things. But bias is something. Let's say that you. I'm going to use a very trivial example. You are not a morning person. You function very well late in the evening, right? Now, in order to study the impact of sleep deprivation, I force you to go to morning classes, early morning, 6 a.m., right? You wake up at 11 a.m. every day. Now, if I get my data to be fully of people who are not natural, that's not a random sample, right? So your response or dislike for the 6 a.m. would be much more acute than for people who, if I took a true random sample. And that leads to what is called a bias. For me, when you guys gave this time, I was very happy. I wake up at 3:30 a.m. every day. So this timing worked perfect. So you have to have a proper random sample across. Otherwise, it creates bias, and you get a lot of examples in political world. If you are one party leaning and you want to study the impact of the other parties, you end up taking sample from just one party that is not for or against, so that will bias your results. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. And the last question is, although there are some more, but due to time constraint, I will take only one. So, are there any ethical issues in the data handling?
Oh, yes. So we have to, first of all, we have to go through good science practices training. That's one thing that United States has it very well established. It's of literally 5-day training that we have to go through before. And when we get medical data, for example, I'm working with the obstetrical or fertility related, all the data is de-identified. That means I cannot take it back to the original. I cannot identify. If for some reason in US the population in some parts is so sparse, you can identify people just by looking at the numbers. Oh, this must be such and such person. For that, we have to set the data to missing. So the answer is yes, and you go through a lot of training to be able to access the data, and the data has to be de-identified totally so that you cannot go back to the original. But whoever asked that question, is your head is in the right place, and that's the first step of doing research in biomedical area.
Okay, thank you once again, ma'am, for such an engaging and thought-provoking session. We deeply appreciate the insights shared and the enlightening discussion that followed.
Thank you
So
so much for the invitation.
now I will call Professor T.R. Rao sir so that he can complete the remaining part of his lecture.
Okay.
Over to you, sir.
Yeah. All right. I'll go to this problem of sharing my screen.
The same way, sir, share the entire screen and then presentation. Minimize.
Can you see now?
It is showing blank screen, sir. White.
Okay. Uh-oh. So that means it didn't work out. Yeah. One more time.
Yes, sir. Now your window is visible, so now you can minimize it and come back to your, sir, from the top right hand. Minimize it. Yes. It's a.
Now?
Is it the off-white, slightly bluish color screen?
Yeah. Now, now it's supposed to show some numbers. It's no. Okay, let me give it one more try. Oh God. Okay, show my screen. Oh, let's see if it works. How about now?
No, sir, the same light
Same?
blue color screen.
Uh-oh.
Can
Oh.
you move to any other slide, sir? Maybe it's a blank.
No, it's not blank. Yeah, okay. That's possibly, because I didn't click um, to go to the next slide, right? Okay. So, I don't, okay. No.
No, sir.
What?
It is showing some screen with your like the internet Chrome browser.
Uh-oh. God, yeah, this is really exasperating.
So you can do one thing, just close your PPT once and then share the entire screen.
Okay. Okay, I'll close the PPT. All right.
Sir, are you there? Sorry for the inconvenience. Sir will join soon. And it is our first day, so that's why, yeah, yeah, one is back. Sir, your mic is mute. Please switch on the microphone. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Done.
Yeah, done.
Okay. Here, now we have a window versus entire screen.
Yeah, sir. And try with entire screen, sir. Entire screen.
It don't let me turn it on, entire screens. First I have to go to, then say entire screen. Click on that. Share.
Now minimize it.
Ah,
Where is your presentation?
yeah.
Yeah, now it's visible, sir. Now
Very
you
good.
can.
Okay, I'll just go to the numbers. Now again, the problem of projection.
Yeah, it's coming.
Very good. Okay. I'm dreadfully sorry for the break. Internet, it's something like when the hero and heroine are in a romantic mood, suddenly villain appears. The villain appears, and the attention of the hero is diverted away, and he has to take care of the villain first before he can get back. Something like this happened. I'm really disappointed. But this it rarely happens here in our colony in Hyderabad. I really don't know what happened. Some, again, one of those probabilities which being generally very, very low, and today it climbed up to 90%. But anyway, but I'm really glad that you had a very scholarly interlude in between. Professor Sundaram giving a very erudite lecture, particularly emphasizing the statistical application in biomedical problems. Okay, see, we went through all these numbers and said that Numbers become data only with a context. Okay. Okay. Data versus anecdotes. Very often we hear people talking about anecdotes. They say this happened, that happened because of this. At some time ago, a lot of people were trying to link cancer with micro towers. You know, these long, tall towers that they erect for phones, smartphones. But it has been shown that there is absolutely no cause and effect relationship at all. Enormous amounts of data have been collected, and they show such low radiations emitting from these tall towers have absolutely no effect or causative factor in cancer. So these anecdotes abound, and people take it as a science because they believe it. Social media propagate it, but unfortunately, they are not supported by sound science or statistical applications. This, of course, Professor Sundaram must be familiar, and I am also. In currency and coins in the United States, the motto that says is "In God We Trust." Some smart guy added, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." So God is exempted from bringing data, but we all have to bring data to prove our point. That we can do only with some quantitative figures. If you don't have data, just another person with an opinion. Um, I'll just quickly show you the distinction between opinion and data with an interesting example with about a person who has been in the news lately a lot, Donald Trump. When he was campaigning for his second term in October 24, New York Times correspondent followed his rallies, and he sent a report to the editor the following way. He said Trump's speeches have grown darker. Remember, he's using a comparative degree. Darker, harsher, longer, angrier, less focused, more profane, and increasingly fixated. Now, these sounds like totally opinions of a prejudiced New York Times reporter. Maybe he's anti-Trump. Maybe he's a total Democrat. This kind of a reporting will create the impression that a reporter is giving his personal opinions about a candidate. But New York Times being what it is, the reporter is very careful and he follows it up with quantitative figures that would make his opinion into solid data. Look at what he says immediately after this. His daily speeches last in average 82 minutes compared to 45 minutes in 2016. He uses phrases like all or none, always, never, 13% more often than he did 8 years ago. He uses 32% more negative words compared to 21 in 2016. He uses swear words 69% more often than he did in 2016. So you can see that if you have some quantitative figures for whatever statement you are making, they suddenly become believable data, which can be subjected to statistical analysis. Here is a beautiful example where the reporter is comparing 2016 campaign when he was contesting for the first time and 2024 for his second term. You have quantitative data which can be compared and apply a statistical test and say there is a significant increase or difference. So with opinions and data, you want to take this cartoon. So you want to look at the data, it's fine. Otherwise, if it is only an opinion, you might as well take my opinion. Types of data. Professor Sundaram mentioned some lot of information about what kind of data you have. Basically, the data you collect belong to three categories. Unfortunately, this is a large topic by itself would form a 1 hour lecture. I'm just giving some idea You have categories where you don't have numbers. Simply say oranges, apples, and guavas. Um, Numerical, where you give numbers, either they are direct or derived. In which case, if it is derived, means from those things, numericals, you can derive percentages, proportions, etc. Then you have the measured ones. They are discrete or continuous. Discrete are something that is a fixed one, there is no intermediate values, whereas continuous one is any number of intermediate values are possible. For instance, the height of humans is a continuous parameter. Although we express, say, 155 centimeters, 156, but if you have an enormous sample size of 2,000 human beings and you can measure up to, say, one tenth of an inch or one tenth of a centimeter, a millimeter, any number of intermediate values are possible. That's a continuous set of data. The reason we distinguish between these two types of data is the type of statistical testing procedures you use will be different, whether it is discrete or continuous. Okay, so I discuss this now. There is already Professor Sundaram mentioned about the bias in collection of data. Bias is simply one of the requirements of a random sample is that every individual in the population should have an equal chance of being represented in your collection, in your sample. If it is not, then you are biased. You want examples? If you are picking up mice in a laboratory experiment for some, toxicology experiment, if you start selectively taking only males in the population, which is the total number of mice you have in the laboratory, or selectively take only males, then you are biased. A male surveyor collecting information on some political elections, things like that, if he selectively goes and selects, say, physically attractive people, he is biased because non-attractive people didn't have a chance to be represented in this sample. So that is bias. And humans have this weakness of showing bias unless some statistical rigor is introduced into our sampling procedures. Very often, human behavior is such, we're influenced by our subjective ideas about people, situations, etc. And it's very doubtful if you ask humans to do something randomly without any bias. Very, very difficult. To cite a quick example, in one of my digital classes during COVID time, when it was all lockout, I couldn't do it in offline mode. I created a digital carom board. Okay. And I asked them to arrange all the 19 coins on the surface of the carom board in such a way that their dispersion pattern or distribution pattern on the carom board will be random. All right, so they all submitted their scans, how they arranged it. I checked it with the coefficient of dispersion test, and lo and behold, 80% of them came out with the non-random arrangement of these coins on the black of the board. This shows now, try as you might, it's often very difficult to be totally random. Okay, that's an
Sorry
important.
to interrupt, sir. So we are
Yeah,
exceeding the time limit. So I would
yeah, another 5 minutes.
request
I'll
you to
finish in
keep
5 minutes.
yeah.
5 minutes.
Thank you.
5 minutes. So you generally, an investigator has to take into account bias as well as the variability. The figures are self-instructive, and so you can follow what is the ideal situation with reference to bias and variability. Both should be small while you're doing sampling. Okay, quickly, how does a professional statistician see a biologist? He goes to the statistician after the study is over. And this they need to be analyzed. This is wrong. One should see a statistician before planning an experiment. That way, he can advise you the right experimental design and also the right optimal sample sizes for your study. And here is a quotation by Fisher. Another thing that many novices, freshly graduated PhDs and all those things, are trying to publish papers, they believe that their research reports become publishable if fortified and embellished with statistical tests and quote some p-value, chi-square value, or things like that. That is like sprinkling Ganga Jal a little bit in every room to make the whole apartment sanctified. This is a common practice, at least used to be. Then another thing that students have been going through for is a statistical overkill. Thanks to the availability of very sophisticated statistical softwares, everybody uses very, very fancy. A simpler statistical test like a t-test or a chi-square test would have been adequate. Like a t-test or a chi-square test would have been adequate. This is like to hit a walnut and break it. A stone or a hammer would do, but if you go for sledgehammer, this is overkill. And the way a drunken man uses a lamppost, more for support than for illumination. This means now you have to use statistics in such a way that it illuminates data and gives better insight. Finally, ethics in science. This some student question. This one, pure ideal purpose of statistics is to help define or solve problems. And at the other extreme, we have this dishonestly misleading people from the truth using statistics. In between, you have a whole spectrum of unethical, dishonest practices. And these have been shown. I don't have time to go through so many ways statistics can be misused to hide or misrepresent facts. And an investigative report showed how many scientists actually practice questionable practices doing all these things. That's very pathetic because I would say this is a sort of a caution to young scientists. Do not be tempted to take shortcuts to becoming famous, to bring a sort of a bad name to your mentors, to your college, to your institutions. And many questionable practices, they end up publishing papers and then retracting it. So there are so many cases where this has been done. Unfortunately, one of the recent ones is from a prestigious institute, National Center for Biological Sciences. A paper published by this professor was shown to be based on falsified data. It's a disgrace. It's a shameful thing. They have to live with that shame for a long time. And recently, Harvard University professor has been shown to have published 135 academic papers in peer-reviewed journals, many of them with fabricated data. So she is under investigation by the Harvard University ethics committees. So, and finally, one more case is where a pharmaceutical company as famous as Merck has paid the publisher to publish only papers that are supported or in favor of using chemicals. So this is unbelievable, unethical practice from the publishers and pharmaceutical companies. This also has come under investigations. Finally, Elsevier admitted, the publisher, the impropriety of such a practice as being totally unacceptable. Thank you so much for this opportunity that's given to me, and I enjoyed delivering it, and I hope you got something out of it. As I said, it's just a broad sweep of all concepts from a biologist's point of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And it was a kick start for this certificate course, as we already thought that we are calling the two big person in this field. One, a biologist who have start working and linking the biological data with the statistics, and with one Rajeshwari Sundaram ma'am, who is basically a statistician, but she is trying to correlate the things, and she beautifully explain how the two things are interrelated. So it was a learning experience for all of us. So there is one request from my side for you. Next time, please try to include the data based like the strategies of betting apps. Like nowadays, when it is IPL, they are suit up, and how they are getting money, getting money by using that. They are showing they can call almost the entire Bollywood and the entire Indian cricket team in for their one ad. So I just want to see how you will explain to our participant that means how they are earning that much money, and when showing that they are giving everything to us only. So your
That is situations where you have a confounding factor like match fixing.
yes, yes, sir. And the way you explain the biostatistics, and it is I'm also agree with you that it is very sad that we are not celebrating our mathematician like Melanovis and CR Rao. They, and we must know them and their contribution in this field. Okay, so now I request all the participants if they have any question, so they can raise your hand or paste the question in YouTube or in the Meet link. Else I have two questions for sir. Anyone? Okay, sir. So my first question for you is, what is falsifiable data? What it means? It was not quite clear for me. Testable and falsifiable.
Falsifiable, yeah.
Yeah, falsifiable.
Yeah, see, suppose now you have a some observation on which you have a hypothesis. Okay, the hypothesis you set up must be falsifiable. If potentially if it is not falsified, you cannot use it as a test because you know already that it can never be falsified. It must have the potential to be falsified. Now, if you say a hypothesis that is universally true, nobody can say it's wrong or it cannot happen. That's not falsifiable. Must have the potential to be falsified, and the statistician, what it does is he goes through all the possibilities of falsification.
We can do to make it more interesting for our student, like the moment they see that like biology student basically try to avoid the math, but the moment we say that okay, you should choose this paper or you should start learning these techniques or different software, they say no sir, we are afraid of mathematics, and that's why we choose the biological field. So what we can do?
An average biology student has been suffering from this so-called mathophobia.
Yes sir.
Right from the beginning, when I started this course, the first thing I assure them is I will not use any maths at all. No equations, no maths. Okay, so I have never used any equations to prove or derivations or any of those things. And I told them biostatistics could be taught interestingly without having a single equation, except you have to give some formula for calculating a t-test or something, which even a high school student can do. So this kind of an assurance takes that mathophobia away and then tend to relax. Now, second thing to make it interesting is, let us not make that subject as something to learn and just leave it at that. So you got a credit in your academic course. That's not true. They should make it as a practice in day-to-day living. Learn to ask questions. If somebody says something, how are you so sure? What is the probability that it can happen? You see, even when we ask a 12th class student, Are you going to pass this test today? I mean, this exam? A borderline student will simply say, well, there is a 50% probability, a chance that I will pass, if their evaluators are liberal enough. So that kind of an attitude is required in your day-to-day life. And third thing, finally, is the teachers have a big role to play. They should not give data to practice for the students. You should ask them to generate the data. It's not very difficult. For instance, if we have 20 students in the biostatistics class and you have to do a normal distribution patterns, you need a sample. The teacher doesn't have to go give a published set of data set and ask you to do all those mean, standard deviation, etc. There are simple things you can do. Is the students can just record all their heights on a blackboard. 20 students recording the heights, you have a sample for analysis. Or most people have smartwatches. You record the heart pulse rate. Blackboard, you have 20 or 30 values. Simply ask them to do the analysis. They can go out and collect, get a bunch of chana seeds, Kabuli chana seeds, whatever. You weigh them. Individual variability, you can see. All it is a balance. You can weigh any number of seeds because there is no dearth of seeds. And when the weighing is over, you can take it home and make chana dal. So you can see the teachers should encourage this kind of a data collection on their own, generate data for any statistical test. With some kind of imagination, creativity on both part of this teacher as well as the student, it can be done.
Okay, sir. Actually, we are following the similar kind of pattern to check the heartbeat, means to check the all three tests. Like we try to check is there any difference between the heartbeat of male and female student?
Yes, exactly.
Or is there any difference between the entire class heartbeat with the universal, that is 72? And we call to do a small exercise just to go down using the stairs and come back, and after 1 minute to check is there any significant difference before having that exercise or not. So we are trying to make that interesting and we will try to follow. So is there any more? No more, sir. Sir, there is one suggestion from my side, that I have seen many papers where the academician using the mean plus minus data, but after that plus minus they are not mentioning whether it is standard deviation or standard error. Such kind of silly mistake can lead to a altogether a different meaning.
Yeah.
So,
this is a very common practice which they do not specify whether it is standard deviation or standard error or simply confidence limits. Okay.
yes,
It needs to be done, but default setting seems to be that they take it as mean plus minus standard deviation.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's it, and it was a great day for all of us. So now it's time for vote of thanks. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to all those who made this event a success. First and foremost, our sincere thanks to Professor T.R. Rao and Dr. Rajeshwari Sundaram for gracing the occasion with their presence and sharing such valuable insight. We are truly honored. I extend our deep appreciation to Principal Sir Professor Narendra Singh, whose guidance and constant support made this program possible. Although we are very unfortunate that he couldn't make it possible because due to some prior commitment. To the IQAC coordinator, Professor P.K. Sisodia, and the bursar of the college, Professor Mukesh Jain, thank you for your constant support and guidance. I also acknowledge the constant effort of the conveners, SDCC, Dr. Saima, and fellow colleagues, Professor Dheeraj Singh, who ensured the smooth conduct of the session. A special thanks to all the participants who have registered and shown such enthusiastic engagement. Your presence is what gives meaning to this course. Last but not the least, thank you all once again for being with us today. We look forward to continue learning, collaboration, and success throughout the course. Thank you very much. And
Thank you. Professor Sundaram, I enjoyed your lecture.
Well, thank you. Likewise.
Okay.
Now all the participants can leave the meeting. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye, Sundaram.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, bye. Bye, everyone.